All right. Stephen, did you want me to lead introductions or did you want to jump in on that?
Sure, I can do that. I can just start with introductions. I'm Stephen Schmitz with Sonoma County Transit. I staff the County Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee for the unincorporated areas. Danny, you can take it away at this point.
Okay. I'll just introduce myself and then I'll read off the list and ask anyone that I don't know their name to introduce themselves. I'm Dana Teray with SCTA. Also on the call, I see Barry Bergman with W-Trans. Barry, are you representing a jurisdiction today or just here as public?
Just here as public, thanks.
Great. I see Bjorn Greipenberg with City of Santa Rosa, Ben Kagiyama with City of Healdsburg, Chris Barney with SCTA, Elizabeth Tyree with Sonoma County Regional Parks, Hannah Perot is public. Is that correct, Hannah?
Correct, yes. Thanks, Dana.
Great, thank you. Mona Ibrahim with Town of Windsor, Nancy Adams with City of Santa Rosa, Orlando Ramirez with Caltrans District 4, and Zeno Switnik. I probably said that wrong. Sorry about that, Zeno. I believe as member of the public, is that correct?
Yeah, Zeno Schweiting and Sebastopol, member of the public.
Thank you. Right, I see JP Harris with City of Cotati, Edie Takata with City of Rohnert Park, Eris Weaver with Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition, and some people joined as I was talking. So if I missed you, could you please introduce yourself?
Kristen Thigpen with Sonoma County DHS.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got introductions. Thanks, Dana. We can move on to approval of the meeting notes from April 27th. I wasn't available for that meeting, so I'll abstain, but somebody else wants to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from April 27th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Of course, I'll second it.
Okay. Are there any objections? I see Nancy Adams' hand is raised. I don't know if that's a mistake or Nancy, if you have a question.
No, I just seconded the motion. And Stephen,
Okay.
I can barely hear you. Is it possible to speak a little bit louder?
Oh, can you hear me now? Is that better?
Kind of. I think I see other head nods. I'm gonna lower
Okay,
my
sorry
hand.
about that. I'll try to speak up.
There we go.
So hearing no objections, the meeting minutes from April 27th are approved. So we'll move on to item number 3, which is public comments. For anybody that would like to make a public comment that's not already on the agenda, now's your time. Eris, I see Eris's hand raised.
Because of course, you know, I can't let a public meeting go by without making some kind of public comment in general. Two things that are kind of been on my mind lately. One is, you know, we had such a boom of people getting on bikes during COVID. And as we start going back to semi-normal, looking at ways for that to continue. And many of you may have seen a story that Carrie Benefield did in the paper, not this Sunday, but the Sunday before, about the Taco Tuesday community ride that someone's got going here in Santa Rosa. We're now up to like 60 people showing up to just ride their bikes and go have tacos. And it's the most diverse group of people I am ever in. And just a lovely thing. I know there are some similar rides happening in Petaluma, and I heard rumors of Sebastopol, and I'm looking to see something in Cotati Rohnert Park since that's where I live. But just finding more of these easy entry ways to get more people out on their bikes and having fun, as opposed to go ride your bike to work. Like, hey, come ride your bike and have tacos and have fun. I think is going to be a great thing for getting more people on bikes. The other thing that I've been thinking about is I recently had a meeting with several of my board members and other folks of our sort of advocacy committee of looking forward into what are the things we are most interested in nudging at all of you guys about getting done in terms of bike policy and infrastructure. And really one of the things that was standing out for us is how many of our jurisdictions, I think Santa Rosa is the with their update in 2018, but how outdated everybody's bike and ped master plans are. I know that there are a couple of you who are already starting to the process to get your next ones done. But that's something that we're really hoping to see happen fairly soon, because of course so much has changed since many of those were last done, and nothing can get funded if it's not in your plan. So whatever ways we can both be of any assistance in that process, as opposed to just, you know, poking at you to get things done. We're looking forward to having more of those conversations. I think that's, we got a couple classes coming up, both our smart cycling. We have a family bike workshop coming up in Sonoma. And we continue to do a class specifically on safety, but riding e-bikes for the participants in Sonoma Clean Power's e-bike subsidy program. All right, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Eris. Any other members of the public that would like to comment? Anything that's not already on the agenda? Okay. I see no hands raised or anybody speaking up, so move along to item number 4, which is transportation funding opportunities presentation. Is that you, Dana?
Yep, I'm going to go ahead and give this today. This item was a presentation was brought to our board earlier this month on a consolidated 5-year funding strategy. And then it went to our technical advisory committee meeting last week. So some of you may have seen this presentation given by James Cameron and Shauna Gaz, and they're both out today, so I'm going to do my best to give you the information and answer questions. I did realize that the version of the staff report that is in the agenda is from our board meeting, and there was some revisions, including a draft application that went out in the TAC meeting last month. I'm going to just post the link to that agenda handout that went to the TAC last week in the chat for anybody who wants it immediately. And then I'll get that posted up to our website on the CBPAC page after this meeting. So, so yes, like I said, some of you may have already heard this, but it may be new to others. So I'll go through this and then try to answer questions. Slideshow. Sorry about that. Okay. All right, can I just show you this? Let's see. Sorry about that. All right. So this, like I mentioned, this was a informational item that went to our board, really to start the conversation and to prepare for upcoming funding opportunities. This is also going to committees to seek input on the draft application and the timeline. And so really this is just to highlight some exciting transportation infrastructure funding that's coming up. The SCTA board will be acting on a 5-year funding strategy, including over $70 million. And while our needs to meet our goals continue to exceed funding available, it's important to focus these funds on our highest priorities and leverage outside fund sources. So staff has categorized the many fund sources into 3 primary categories. These are fund sources for approval by SCTA in FY22, for funding from FY23 through FY27, fund sources to be leveraged, possible future fund sources, and then we'll close out with some next steps. And what's not listed here are the your jurisdiction's local sources of funding, including general fund, enterprise funds, developer fees, local sales tax, and direct gas tax subventions. So here is a table from the staff report that shows the programs that SCTA will be acting on and how the total of over 70 million was estimated. Starting at the top, OBAG 3 is a recommendation to MTC. Then MTC makes the final decision on that. We need to be competitive to meet and exceed our targets with OBAG 3. And the remainder of the funds are SCTA's decision, as long as they are eligible expenditures that meet the grant requirements, including matching funds. The STIP has historically gone to the carpool lane on Highway 101 for the past couple of decades. And this is a strong fund source for work on the state highway system, but it can also be used off the highway system as long as it's a federally eligible facility. The LPP formula is an SB1 program that is a formula fund that go direct to SCTA. And that's not to be confused with the LPP competitive, which is a statewide competitive program. The TDA 3 and TFCA are annual programs that most of you are familiar with, that the board just acted on at the May meeting. And then Go Sonoma is the extended sales tax measure. And the revenues shown here are for the move traffic and improve safety, which is 27% of the measure, as well as the build bikeways and pathways, which is 12% of the measure. The funds are available in fiscal year 26 and 27, which are the latter years of the 5-year funding plan. Regional mitigation fee is a program developed by Rohnert Park and SCTA to address housing impacts outside of the Rohnert Park city limit and eligible projects that span from Pen Grove to Katati. So on to the fund sources to be leveraged. Grantors like to be that last dollar to deliver construction, and some jurisdictions are ready to compete for these funds. Others may need funding to get ready. Some programs under SB1 are standalone and others supplement the existing programs. Sonoma County successes have included SB1 SCCP for the Marin Sonoma Narrows project, Windsor's recent success on SB1 LPP competitive for their roundabout, Santa Rosa's recent ATP success to fund the JC area bike and ped overcrossing, SHOP funding for the Highway 116, 121 roundabout. And once the lawsuit is resolved, if it is, the regional measure 3 programs, including the North Bay Transit Access, Bay Trail, Smart to Healdsburg, and Route 37. Federal grants like RAISE, which previously were billed, and prior to that, Tiger, we'll see applications for both SMART and the Hearn interchange for this cycle. And the third And final category is possible future fund sources. Safe and seamless quick strike is the most recent example of this. This was composed of an STP bump and CRISA relief funds. And future examples may include American Jobs Plan, Surface Transportation Reauthorization, state budget ATP increases, tribal funds if revenue returns to pre-pandemic levels, and there are likely to be others as well. So to summarize, we will be confirming priorities, working through SCTA's committees. We'll want to balance the need to identify the projects versus finding the project to match the grant. We are looking to strategize what type of funds are best for each project and jurisdiction, consolidate calls for projects, and we'll be asking the board to consider a shop request letter to Caltrans in July. And SCTA will be supporting a competitive grant applications, of course, and we're returning to our board with a schedule of how staff will be working through committees on calls for projects and board recommendations. So going back to the same table we started with fund sources for approval by SCTA with regard to the schedule. STIP recommendations are due to CTC in spring 2022. And MTC is scheduled to finalize OBAG 3 targets at their October meeting. The LPP has flexibility, and TDA 3 and TFCA are annual programs, but we could take a multi-year approach if it makes sense to use some of those fund sources as part or all of certain projects that are submitted. Go Sonoma Act is in the out years, then regional mitigation follows housing production in Roanoke Park. Details on the final schedule and calls for projects will be a follow-up item. And yeah, so we had actually sent a draft call for projects to the TAC committee, and that's what I also posted in the chat here. We are looking for feedback really on kind of a timeline for asking for projects to be submitted. This is accelerated a bit because the STIP process is actually coming sooner and will be coming sooner than OBAG 3. And we're really at this point, like asking people to take a look at the draft application, give us your feedback on the process before we actually go out for a call for projects. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and open this up for questions.
Okay, thanks, Dana. I see a hand raised by JP Harris. JP, I think you got your hand up first.
Thanks, Steve. Dana, I'm sorry I missed it. Did you say that Go Sonoma was included Measure M in those figures there?
So Measure M takes us through April 2025.
Yeah.
Right. And so those figures do not include Measure M. So Go Sonoma is the extension of Measure M. And those figures do include basically the first 2 years of the Go Sonoma Act.
Okay. And then I have another question about the regional mitigation fee. In your brief write-up, it mentioned 7 million, then it only shows 4.8. And I was kind of curious why it had a reduced amount in that table.
I am not sure. I'll have to have somebody get back to you on that.
That's
Yeah,
fine. I guess more importantly, I'm interested in how, is this just a one-off, or is there a potential to see more of this kind of regional mitigation fees, especially with respect to greenhouse gas reduction, which are going to require regional solutions. We can't, we just can't mitigate greenhouse gas at the local level, so. I don't know if you have anything to add to that. But I find that to be an interesting source of funds there, the Roner Park one.
yeah, definitely. Not super involved in the regional mitigation fee, and I might ask someone who is around while that was being developed if they have any insight on that. But I think that this has been the only time that we've done something like this, especially with SCTA being involved. Edie, do you have anything to add to it?
Well, it's definitely a convergence of developer wanting to develop, local, our neighbors seeing the coming impact. So, are these will jurisdictions ask this of the developers, and can they get it from them? So, yeah, it's probably, this is a tool, right? But it's not, especially having SCTA involved, that was something that is unusual.
Edie, did that come out of impacts out of an environmental document, or what was the leverage? I mean, how did you justify asking for the fee?
Yeah, I wasn't around for that. I can find out if you're curious.
I am, yeah.
But I mean, at some level, yeah, it would, certainly if you're the developer and said, well, what does the environmental doc say? But everything's negotiable, right?
Yeah, sometimes it's easier than others. So.
Yeah. So that's a good question. But I don't doubt that it did come out of the environmental doc, and then push and pull, and then our neighbors are concerned.
Yeah. And then Edie, I have one more question. I know it may not be appropriate to ask now, but you had mentioned before and that you were looking to get funding for, and this goes back to Eris's comment earlier, to assist communities with updating their bike and pedestrian master plans. And I don't know if any of these sources of funding would be included in that, or if you could give us a brief update on where's that's at, if it's appropriate.
Yeah, so that is an item later on the agenda.
Oh, we did.
And
Well, then I'll wait. Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. To my knowledge, I think that these funds are all for project implementation, not for planning.
Mhm.
I could look into that further and confirm that, but that's my general understanding.
Thanks, Dana. Thanks, Steve. I'm done.
Okay, I'll move on to Elizabeth Tyree.
Thank you, Stephen. And thank you, Dana, for the presentation. And yes, I heard this at the TAC as well. So thank you for providing your excellent presentation on this. I welcome the thinking around priority projects for our whole region, and identifying those and looking at multiple sources of funding. After thinking more about the TDA3 funding, Stephen each year prepares a list of funding opportunities and for the different for the county CBPAC, and we've identified projects along with TPW on projects that we see now and in the future. And those are often projects that we're matching with other funding that's secured to move those forward. Those aren't maybe as much as the big ticket items, but we're able to move significant projects forward with those, such as our partnership with Roner Park, with a connection to Crane Creek Regional Park. So I would suggest the TDA funding, it's not quite the same match the way that we've been using it in the past with the other buckets of funding that we've put into this $70 million pot. But yeah, we're happy to identify for county regional parks and working with TPW on the county's priority projects. And so I welcome the discussion on this and the thinking on this. And at the same time, want to make sure we think broadly about, as you said in the presentation, the best funding matches for different projects. And perhaps not all of these are the highest priority projects for each region. Thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I would just like to note that, we're not necessarily looking to change the structure of TDA3. And so, if the county wants to keep, looking at doing some future planning for how you would use those funds and prioritizing the projects that you would like to use the TDA3 funds on internally, there's no problem with that at all. We encourage that. This is, the TDA3 funds are included in the list more as a big picture of the funds available, and would be looked, as projects come in, we may see that it would be a good match for part of certain projects. So we're not necessarily changing the structure of it or the way that we allocate it to each jurisdiction.
Okay, Ken from Petaluma, you're up next.
Yeah, thank you very much, Stephen. Dana, thank you very much for the presentation. So 2 questions. One is you and James and Shauna are looking for comments on the actual funding program call for projects. It's draft in there, so you would like to have back comments on that. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, all right. And then second question is vision. How is Vision Zero sort of looked at? I feel like we've got this goal out there, and I didn't see it directly connected. Was there background discussions of how to include that in this document? Thank you.
Yeah, so the application does have some check boxes up front that match the goals that were adopted for our comprehensive transportation plan, including Vision Zero. And so I think that, checking those boxes and including description of how the project can help accomplish Vision Zero goals is great. I think that that's about as far as we've gotten with this so far. And since Vision Zero is still in progress, we haven't quite lined up how it might impact calls like this in the future. But I think that you're definitely encouraged to include outcomes from the projects that are relevant to Vision Zero.
Okay. Anyone else with questions? I see JP's hand is still raised. I assume he just never put that back down. So opening it up to the rest of the group here for any additional questions from Dana. What is the call for projects is released in August, Dana? I think maybe I missed what the proposed timeline was for.
Yeah, so it looks like the STIP funding has been moved ahead and actually needs to be approved by SCTA in October. So I don't know if we have an exact date for when the call for projects is going out, but I think it's going to need to happen fairly quickly because it seems like October is far away, but getting the projects in and being able to review them and take them through committees and get to our October board, it's going to come up pretty quickly. So yeah, I don't have a exact date when that call's coming out, but I would encourage you to review the draft application and send in your feedback sooner than later.
But it'll probably be a quick turnaround, like you said, like probably due by the end of August. If it gets released early August, they'll probably be due by the end of August, I would think, to meet that October deadline.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, and sorry, I don't have
Yeah, I know. I'm just
the right,
talking.
the right people to give me a firm answer here, but I think that that sounds about right.
Okay. Anybody else? Any final questions on this item?
I think Nancy has her hand.
Nancy's got her hand up. Nancy?
Oh yeah, look at my video. Isn't it really crazy? Sorry about that. I don't know what's going on. So actually, Dana, Shauna made a little chart on, remember at the TAC meeting? So I just want to make sure I'm clear on the schedule. So my notes that I took a picture of that Shauna wrote down was that you guys would probably do a call for our project priorities in August, and then it would go, I'm not sure when it would be. It looks like it would be due like the week before the September TAC meeting. Does that
Okay.
sound right? So like the middle of September, get out of there. Oh, sorry, I'm just talking to myself. And then it would go to the TAC in September, which is, what's the TAC September date?
Third week,
The 23rd, right?
uh,
23rd of September.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and then it will go to your board in October. So, Santa Rosa's working right now. We just had a couple of internal calls, and then we're gonna, and Edie Takava brought this up. If you want locals to run this by their council, that doesn't give us a lot of time, and so we're pinched. She's shaking her head. I see that. Yeah. So, that's putting us on a very, we're going to only be meeting with our mayor and our MTC commissioner and our SCTA alternate, right? So we're really scoping this down because we don't have a time to get this to the full council to make that, the submittal to you guys by the 16th of September. So, or that week of the 13th. So, it's a very quick turnaround, and unless that's changed, but that was the schedule Shauna put up there last Thursday. So just I want to make sure I'm clear. Is that do I have it right?
Nancy, thanks for, you probably took better notes than I did, so thank you for that. That sounds like it's probably right, and I will definitely give this feedback to James and Shauna about the tight turnaround, if in fact that is the schedule, and ask for some clarification and let them know that that does make it difficult to bring it to councils. So thank you for that.
Okay, anybody else? Any final comments or questions? I don't see any more hands raised. So I think it's safe at this point to move on to item number 5, the TDA 3 and TFCA quarterly report. Dana?
Yep, I'll take that. So in your agenda on page 27 and 28 are the quarterly reports for the Transportation Development Act Article 3 projects and the Transportation Fund for Clean Air projects. These are both through the end of fiscal year 2021. We have a few projects highlighted in red that have expiration dates coming up either or that pass it in their fiscal year or coming up at the end of this year. I do know that Santa Rosa TDA3 project, we're do have another invoice in for that. So, and that project's closed out. And then the TFCA projects with upcoming expirations are not until the end of the year. I do want to point out on the TFCA projects that I've added a column that shows the project start deadline. Projects have always had a start deadline. And however, because of COVID and a lot of project delays that have happened, the Air District has kind of added some flexibility for projects for a number of, the past few years, and then this last year and this current year in terms of start deadlines. So it's now either the end of after you get the project awarded, the end of the next calendar year is what it normally is. They've added flexibility to make it 24 months from when the contract was fully executed. So that's why you see some different dates in there for different projects. It's dependent on when we got the contracts executed. So since things are not just one flat deadline for starting it, I'm just tracking it for everyone here. So happy to take any questions on this.
Okay, any questions from the group on the TDA3 or TFCA quarterly report? Don't see any hands. So thanks, Dana. We can move on to item number 6, which I think is Chris Barney, the Strava Metro travel activity data.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. And so I'll kick things off and provide a brief demo on the Strava Metro platform, and then turn things over to Bjorn from the city of Santa Rosa, who's actually been taking a look at the data and thinking about how to apply it to local bicycle and pedestrian planning. So if you're not aware of what Strava is, it's a mobile application that lets you track walking, running, and bicycle use. So Strava has recently packaged a lot of their data into something called the Strava Metro platform, which allows public users to get a free account. I've included a login link in the staff report in the agenda. So this allows you to go and sign up for an account and start exploring their data for your jurisdiction. So there are a few different ways that you can look at the data on their website. One is a high-level dashboard showing usage information for trips and people. There's a map that you can use to look at kind of high-level usage, and then zoom down into individual road links and see how the usage is looking on individual roads. And then you can actually download the data and use it outside of their system using GIS or spreadsheets and stuff like that. So if I'm able to share my screen, I'll go ahead and bring up the demo version of the platform and show a little bit of information for Denver, Colorado that shows kind of what it looks like, and then turn things over to Bjorn to talk a little bit about Santa Rosa. All right, let me make sure I get the right screen here. So right now you should be able to see a dashboard showing information for Denver, Colorado. So I do want to just start out saying that this is based on the Strava data. So it is a sample and it is slightly biased based on who's using their platform, right? But it's another source of data that'll let you see how people are walking and biking in your jurisdiction. And there are ways that you could use this information along with other count data you may have to get a more, a full picture of how people are, traveling using these modes in your jurisdiction. And I think Bjorn may have a few ideas to discuss on that. So here on the high level dashboard, there are a few things you can do. You can look at bicycling and run, walk, and hike modes. So it's really simple to just shift between those. You have some high level statistics at the very top. Total trips, they split those by weekend and weekday trips. And then they have ways of estimating the total number of people and looking at visitor to the area as well. So you can actually look at different time periods at this high level dashboard and then play around with the different graphs and charts that they have available down below. So the 4 charts that they have available on the high level dashboard include a summary of trips. So this is total trips. You can look at total trips and then look at leisure versus commute travel. And then the way they're separating those at this point is they're looking at the directness of the trip. So if trips are more direct, the algorithm Strava uses classify those as commute trips, and the more meandering trips they classify as leisure trips. So you can look at different time periods as well, going back to 2017, and do some comparisons there. Look at months versus weeks. So you can see kind of the gets a little more jagged as you get more detailed there. You can look at individual people. So this is separate from trips because the same person may make multiple trips in a certain time period. So you can see this number is a lot lower because the same person may record their individual trip every day, every week on an ongoing basis. So you can look at individual unique people that are active in your area. And again, this is for Denver County in Colorado. Again, you can look at locals versus visitors and different time periods. You can get some rough demographics. So here on the high level dashboard, you're just able to look at age. And then a split between visitor versus locals. And you can switch back and forth between bike and walk here too, and kind of see the breakdown by year for those different use types. So the map is probably the more interesting way you can view the data. So again, this is for Denver. So when you first get here, you get what they call a heat map. And so if you look at the legend down below, anything colored with a darker blue has higher activity levels. So you can zoom in around and go to some of these park areas and you can see the higher activity levels versus some of these other routes. So the street view is where you can really dig into more localized data. So how you use this is you'd zoom into an individual area, you load the data for that area, and you can select an individual segment. So maybe we're interested in this pathway through this park along the creek. You can select that, and you get more detailed information for usage for that individual segment. So you can choose different time periods over on the left. You can look at all travel versus the commute and leisure activities, time of day. And then you can look at trips versus people. And again, that's looking at unique users, looking at the people tab, and total trips, looking at the trips tab. So you can see kind of the breakdown of the average speed, the breakdown of how many people are using this for commuting versus just for fun or leisure, breakdown by time of day. This is pretty cool. This is something we're able to see with our automated counters as well. Being able to see when people are using these facilities during the day is really powerful. You can see usage by day of the week, by month. And right now this is just showing June because that's all we have selected, but you can go and look at a full year and we should see usage by different months or seasons over here on the side. So if we go down, yeah, you can see things are higher during the summer, May, June, April, which makes sense when things are probably a lot nicer to bike in Denver, the Denver area. So people is very similar. You're just looking at, unique individuals, not trips there. So then you can actually look at corridors. So this is looking at a collection of different segments. So you can click on that, get slightly less information than for an individual segment. But if you have a longer facility and you want to get some more usage for that, you can do that by using this corridor tool. And then finally, there's a route tool, which lets you look at origins and destinations. So you can look at where people are starting a trip. So maybe they're starting at the Central Park Station here and going, I don't know, to their house over here. So what it does is it looks at the most popular route, which is in red, showing, according to their database, what routes people are taking between those locations versus the shortest or more direct route. So you can see the most direct routes actually going along some streets, but the popular routes actually coming through the park on pathways. So that's an interesting tool as well. So you can drag those different parts around. So again, another interesting planning tool and kind of fun to play around with. So as I said before, you are able to go in and select data and download it. And so you can use it in your own GIS or look at the tabular data. This right here is just kind of what you would get if you sign up for Strava Metro. It's all free. So you can sign up for an account and look at the data for your jurisdiction and just get an idea of, you know, what their data looks like in your area and use that to see maybe what's happening and combine that with counts to get a better picture for usage within your jurisdiction. So with that, maybe I'll take any questions on the online platform and then turn things over to Bjorn to kind of talk about what he's been doing with some of that downloaded data and what he has in mind for, you know, usage long-term for planning in Santa Rosa. Stephen, it looks like Eris has a question.
Yeah,
Okay.
Eris
Hi, Eris.
Yeah, of course I do.
Yeah.
So one of my questions is, what do we know about how many people actually use Strava, or a guesstimate of what percentage of cyclists use Strava? Because I know, right, all my friends who are, you know, the real spandex crowd, people use it all the time. If you looked at my Strava, you would think I ride 500 miles in May and then don't ride the entire rest of the year. And a lot of people who ride for transportation don't feel a need to track what they're doing at all.
Yeah.
So I guess so it's obvious to me that the data that we see from Strava is a smaller set of all the actual amounts of people riding bikes. But I guess I'm trying to figure out how much greater the total might be, and obviously might be different patterns, right? The people riding around the neighborhood to go to the grocery store versus somebody going on a 40-mile recreational ride. So do we know anything about that? About what Strava, does Strava say anything about their numbers of users, or can you find that when you go in and look at a jurisdiction? How many Strava users are we looking at?
So they haven't specifically published that as far as I've seen. Bjorn may have some information for Santa Rosa, but you know that it's very true what you're saying. This is an incomplete picture, right? So, and it's really biased on a certain user base. You know, I think the recreation user, you know, tracking recreation trips is definitely going to be higher than people, you know, traveling for commuting or other transportation. So that being said, you know, if we can get that information, it'd be useful, you know, what the sample size is. I'm sure it varies by location as well. How many people are using that may be available by contacting Strava and getting an estimate. But at the very least, I think, you know, using this information in conjunction with other data sources like the bike ped counts that we've been able to collect could be useful at getting a more complete picture. And as you can see on the map, the coverage is a lot broader than what we're really able to collect using, you know, with our traditional count programs. So, you know, using maybe some of those count locations that we have to get a more realistic look at total usership and ridership and use, and then adjusting that up could be a potential application. But yeah, I think as long as you're going into using this, being aware of what the limitations are, I think it could be useful. But yeah, I would definitely agree with you that there is a lot of bias, and the data is certainly not complete. It looks like Elizabeth has a comment or question as well.
Yeah, building on that bias issue, I walk, I ride for transportation, I ride for recreation, and I walk for the same. I don't know if Strava is free. You're offering free for metro use. Is Strava free to individuals?
So I believe it is for tracking your individual rides and walks. Strava Metro is free for public users. So this interface that I showed, they're offering a free subscription for public agencies to be able to access that data. So yeah, like Era said, and as I've said before, it is definitely biased, right? The people with devices that are actually tracking their travel it's a subset and a biased subset, but it is information that you can add to the other information you're collecting, you know, by counting people, using counters, doing surveys, looking at census data. So, you know, it's another source to help understand kind of how people are using your facilities and traveling. So,
No, I appreciate that, Chris, and just building on the bias issue.
Yeah.
I want to keep our minds open for the whole community that's walking and riding. And yes, this is a great tool. It's a lens that offers some insight, but I don't want to, I want us to also think about other community members who may not have the tools like this to use, or I don't want us to leave people out of the thinking for walking and biking facilities.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. This is just another tool that you can use to look at things, right? And it's certainly not complete. Yeah, I just wanted to make everyone aware that this is available. It's free right now. So it's another source of information. If there are no more questions, maybe we can turn things over to Bjorn to talk about how he's using the data and any thoughts he has on the information. He's digging into it. He's dug into it a little bit deeper than I have.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. I don't know if, can you guys all hear me all right? I've got the mask, so hopefully, all right, this is working. Well, good to see you all. My name is Bjorn Griepenberg. I'm active transportation planner for the city of Santa Rosa. I've been here since about January. I'm working under Nancy in our transportation and public works department. Let's see if I can share my screen. Oh, it says it is disabled.
So Chris, I made you the host. Can you
okay.
right over to Bjorn?
Yes. So do I need to make Bjorn the host to allow sharing?
Click on his name. You should be able to transfer it over to him.
Okay, Bjorn, you should be able to share.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. All right. So yeah, you guys all touched on, you asked, Eris and Elizabeth definitely asked the right questions about representation and bias with Strava. There are definitely some limitations with the data. You touched on, the fact that it's not a representative sample of all people who are riding bikes. And we know that Strava is definitely more people are going to be using Strava predominantly in more affluent areas, and also the type of rider tends to be more recreational, right? It's generally, I think kind of the stereotype of a Strava user is someone who is wearing Lycra and going on a road ride or a mountain bike ride, right? They're riding more for exercise than for transportation. Another kind of interesting limitation with the data, if you're thinking about it as a source for counts, is that we are seeing increased adoption of Strava itself, and that doesn't necessarily equal an increase in bicycling. So Strava adds about 2 million new users every month, and that doesn't necessarily mean that all of those people are new to bicycling. So those are the two, I think, primary limitations with the data. But like Chris alluded to, it can be part of a I think, part of a suite of data sources. So Eris asked how we can get towards, understanding how representative that sample is. And this is actually, there's a lot of research going into this. A lot of cities right now are basically taking that Strava data that Chris was just showing on certain roadway or pathway segments, and then comparing it with the count data they have in order to come up with a usage rate. And so, and they can do that, citywide. They can take several counts across their city, either with tubes or maybe they have permanent counters installed, and then compare that number with what Strava has, and they can then figure out, what percentage of people on bikes are using Strava, so that they can then apply that number to a broader geography or to other streets, other pathways, and come up with rough ridership estimates for those corridors, if that makes sense. So yeah, so if you see, if you see a 5% usage rate on a pathway, then, probably increase that number by about 95% to get your real ridership number. We are looking, and sorry, I can't see the chat right now, so I don't know if.
Okay, Bjorn,
Oh.
you're not in slideshow mode. You're in
Oh.
like notes mode.
Oh, what? One screen has that. Okay, let's see.
There, yeah, and then now
When I went to presenter view, it's sharing the wrong.
Presenter view shows you your notes. You want to go to
There we go.
slideshow. There you go.
How about that?
There we go.
That's
Much
perfect.
better. Thank you.
So what we're looking at with the city is we're developing a bicycle pedestrian count program, and we will likely incorporate Strava as one of our sources, but obviously will not be the standalone source. So, taking a similar concept to what I was just describing, installing permanent counters where we can on especially on our major paved multi-use pathways, and also taking some short-term tube counts throughout the city, and then comparing that with Strava Metro to come up with that usage rate, and so that we can, it just means our count program is much more robust, right? We can get a lot more out of our Strava data. It's not really, but thus far we have not really used it for counts. We've used it more to look at actually patterns in and understand how people are currently riding through Santa Rosa. And it's actually yielded some pretty interesting findings. So I'll just show some of these now. So one of the ways that we've used this a lot is just to understand rider preference on parallel routes. And it is interesting because you do, like I said, you think of your general Strava user as someone who's going to be probably much more confident riding in or near traffic. But when we look at our data, when we look at the heat maps, we actually see the routes that riders are choosing tend to be calmer side streets. And this is a great example. So this is, if you're familiar with the JC neighborhood, here you see College Avenue, which is a busy, 4-lane arterial road, and then Benton Street and Spencer Avenue, which are calm neighborhood streets. Neither of these right now are actually classified as bike routes, but you can see that people are using them as bike routes, as east-west routes through this neighborhood. And as a result of this, this kind of discovery, actually, we're actually looking at making Benton Street a bike boulevard in Santa Rosa. Spencer Avenue is proposed in our bicycle and pedestrian master plan as a bike boulevard, but Benton Street was not. It wasn't even in our plan. And we've gotten some feedback from the public, and now verified by Strava Metro that this is a route that people are currently using. So we might as well formalize that and make some improvements to help facilitate that connectivity. Another interesting, if you once you start looking around your jurisdiction, looking at the heat map, you'll see some interesting lines that surprise you. This is just one example here in Santa Rosa that kind of caught me by surprise. I saw this line here, if you can see my cursor up here, and this is a dead end street that does not connect to Mendocino Avenue. And I thought, why is that? What's going on there? And what I figured out is people are actually riding on our bike boulevard on Humboldt Street And then rather than cutting over to Mendocino and riding northbound, some of them are actually coming up and using this dead end street and then popping out onto the sidewalk on this little dirt path, right? And so this is the kind of thing that you wouldn't really, you might not realize how many people are doing this. And then you look at a heat map and you actually see, I think what I saw was about 400 people a year do that on a bike. And that's just people who are recording on Strava. So that's interesting. And then another, similar to the last point, this is another little area that stuck out to me or jumped out at me. This is riding between Hohen Frontage Road and Bennett Valley Road. You can see a significant number of people are actually doing this little diversion onto Townview Lane. And they're doing that basically, to avoid a busy intersection and probably to avoid some traffic signals. And I assumed that they would all be doing this in the northeast bound direction. But as you can see from this left turn movement here, a lot of them are actually doing it in the southwest direction. So they're riding down the Hohen Frontage Road, and then they're somehow they're either riding the wrong way down this road, or they're turning left here, turning left right here, making this jog, and then waiting for this traffic signal and getting a left here. So you just start seeing these interesting little patterns. And again, these are like I said earlier, we assume these are the strongest, most confident riders. And the fact that they're finding these little shortcuts and these little workarounds, I think does tell you a lot about, their route preferences, but also, can yield some interesting discussions about where and how to accommodate these types of riders. And, in doing so, hopefully also accommodating everyone of other riders who are less confident on bikes. So that's kind of the heat map. There's some of the interesting things you can poke around looking at when you're on the heat map. Once you download this into GIS, you can do some you can look at total ridership. It's a lot easier to see here than it is on the heat map. So this is all corridors with more than 1,000 rides in Santa Rosa, or in the Santa Rosa area, I should say, in 2020. So anything that had less than 1,000 rides is not showing. And then just elevated, the line thickness is representative of the amount of use that each of these gets. You can see Annandale is obviously a major activity center for this area, and then that's the Santa Rosa Creek Trail. So like I said, when you're looking at the heat map version, some of these things don't jump out as much, but then once you download into GIS, it really does show where people are riding, again, with Strava. You can also look at increase in ridership. So this is a little harder to do. Unfortunately, the way they package the data, it's not easy to do this comparison. You have to go into Excel and join the data, which I've done. I'm happy to provide what the data countywide 2016 to 2020 comparison. And then you can start looking at, where ridership is increased over time. But again, that's something you can only do outside of Strava Metro. And I think, yeah, that's everything I had, but I'd be happy to chat some more. And I know Chris was looking into the data sharing abilities. We're somewhat limited in that, but I guess I should mention, when you download the data, it's actually countywide. And when you get once you get access to Strava Metro, it's actually countywide. It's not just limited to your jurisdiction. And so in doing this exercise, I had to download it for the whole county. And so I have this for the whole county. I don't know if we can share it or not, but hopefully we can.
Okay, thanks a bunch, Bjorn and Chris. That's very, very informative, very interesting. I see Nancy, have you raised your hand there? Do you have a comment or a question, Nancy?
Well, I just want to say, appreciate Dana and Chris giving us the opportunity, actually Bjorn, giving this, giving us the city collectively a chance to share this information with all the folks here on the call. And we're just trying to continue to look at ways to, Eris mentioned at the very beginning of this call about, the fact that Santa Rosa's got an updated bike and ped master plan, and many of the things that Bjorn, in fact, all of the things that Bjorn is working on come directly from our plan. And so we're excited to let you all know what we're working on, and we'd like to be a resource for all the cities and parks, regional parks in the county, and Vision Zero. I know Kirsten's on the phone, but we're happy to be that resource as we move forward with working on all these activities. So thank you again for the opportunity to share, Chris and Dana, and good job, Bjorn.
Okay, so any other questions or comments for Chris or Bjorn?
I just want to say this was a terrific presentation. Thank you for this information.
Yeah, I see Ida. Oh, Edie is agreeing. Thanks for the good presentation. I see a hand raised from Zeno.
Yeah, hi. So I noticed there's two versions for users of this tool. One is free and the other is you pay a monthly fee. You get much more capabilities, have to do with ride planning, competition, and so one way to see how representative this data set is if we could know what percentage of the users is using it for free and what is using it for maybe competitive purposes. So I'm not sure whether that information is available, but certainly that would be a way to kind of get a little bit better understanding of how this data set is representative of all bike users.
That's a good point. It's a good point. Anybody else with any comments or questions? Very thought-provoking, and I don't know, I'm ready to go out and download and start playing around with it. Very intriguing. Good information.
I just
Eris,
noticed,
Eris?
yeah, I just noticed that I went and logged in because I've got the free access to Metro. And when I first logged in, I saw the important message: do not share data or screenshots outside of your organization without Strava's prior consent. Data made available through the MetroView platform is confidential. So so I guess the idea of one of us buying it and sharing it with everybody else is probably a big copyright no.
Yeah, that was the original hope, is that, we could maybe have a web map hosted by CETA that would provide the access. But yeah, as you've seen, the use agreement doesn't appear to allow that. So yeah, thanks for the info.
I used to be a librarian. I was really up on copyright stuff.
Okay, anybody else? Any final questions or comments?
I'll drop my email in the chat. So if anyone has any questions or wants some ideas on how to use the data, I'm happy to help out, and feel free to reach out.
Okay, great. Thanks again, Bjorn and Chris. Great job. Good presentation. Really enjoyed that. Moving on to the item number 7, Caltrans District 4 final pedestrian plan.
Yeah, so I'll just say a little bit about this. The Caltrans District 4 final pedestrian plan was released earlier this month. And on the agenda, there's a link to both the announcement that has links to the plan, as well as a story map. So this project started in 2019, and the Caltrans project lead visited this committee back in 2019 as well, to talk about their public input and the process and the plan. Input was collected primarily through Street Story, and the draft plan came out earlier this year, and then the final was released earlier this month. I'm just going to share my screen briefly. If you haven't had a chance to look through their story map, I would highly encourage it, as well as looking through the plan altogether. But I think their story map was really well done. And I'll just briefly walk through it. So it discusses an overview of the plan and how this is the Caltrans District 4 pedestrian plan is really an implementation piece of the greater statewide plan toward an active California that is really centered around the 4 goals of mobility, safety, equity, and preservation. So the District 4 pedestrian plan looked at existing conditions. There's some really great maps in here that show those conditions, including surrounding land use context. And this shows the state highway system and how it's classified by either a main street, urban, rural, or inner community connector. And then it shows where walking is permitted along the state highway system. And that's these green lines here. And it is prohibited on the red lines. And this is an area you are all familiar with. And then it goes into, has maps showing the sidewalk and crossing conditions. And those are classified from good to poor. And it includes collision data, pedestrian collision data. Again, areas you're familiar with, shown on the story map here, with the darker colors indicating higher rates of crashes for pedestrians. And moving on, the plan shows the disadvantaged communities throughout the Bay Area, and the state highway system within those disadvantaged communities. And then goes into location-based needs, which are shown as dots or lines along the state highway system. Dots are freeway crossings, and then the lines are highway segments. And it shows how these were prioritized according to a scoring process for all of the needs that were identified throughout the plan, going from tier 1 in a darker red to tier 2 in orange and tier 3 of priority in blue. This map shows the survey responses, both by public and community-based organizations. And then there are the maps here showing the full layers of data that are included in the plan. And then at the end, it just talks about kind of what the next steps are for using this plan in review of projects and project implementation. So Sergio Ruiz with Caltrans is the Complete Streets Coordinator, and is a great resource for more questions on the plan. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen here, but wanted to walk everyone through that. And so you have kind of an idea of the breadth of maps that are available and information that's available as links through that storyboard. So I'll just open it up there, but I just wanted to make sure everybody's aware that this plan's been published and that it's out there.
Okay, thanks, Dana. Any questions from the group? Hearing none. Thanks for that. And I think we can move on to item 8, which is the draft technical advisory on CEQA streamlining.
Yeah, so this item is also just an informational item. We did send this out by email to all the CBPAC and TAC members. So this is the draft technical advisory on CEQA streamlining for sustainable transportation projects. OPR is taking comments on this through August 23rd. And I realized I didn't put the person's name who you should send you could find it at OPR, but I'm gonna just put in the chat the contact at OPR where comments should be submitted to. I'm gonna put that in the chat as soon as I could make sure I'm sending it to everyone. All right. All right, so that email is in the chat. This is just the informational item.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dana. And I think we can move on to item 9, the Countywide Active Transportation Plan update.
All right, so as you may recall, SCTA applied for a Caltrans Sustainable Communities Transportation Planning Grant back in February for an update to the Countywide Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan and updates to a number of local jurisdiction plans as well. We recently were notified that we did not receive the grant, unfortunately. It is a highly competitive grant, and there were a lot of good projects out there. So unfortunately, we didn't get it. We did get really good feedback from Caltrans. We had a debrief with them and got some really good tips for how to improve the application. It is very common for agencies to apply for this particular grant multiple times before getting it. So they did encourage us to apply again, and we are planning to apply for the next round of funding. We expect the call to come out in September, and that revised application to be due this fall. So we do plan to do that. Some of the main kind of areas that they wanted to see strengthened were to make a stronger case for the urgency in updating the plan, and have more details in the scope about the level of work that will be done with each local plan that's included in this. So for next steps, we are really looking at the urgency piece to be tied directly to prioritizing a mechanism to prioritize funding for the bicycle and pedestrian portion of the Go-Sonoma Act. As the funding for this next round would be available if we were to get the grant fall 2022, and actually the whole project wrapped up pretty nicely just ahead of the Go-Sonoma Act funding being available. And for revising the application, we also plan to talk with each jurisdiction in more detail between now and our next CBPAC meeting about the level of of needs for their plan updates. I know that a number of jurisdictions are actually working on pieces of either a full plan update right now, just getting started, or working on updating certain portions of it. So I know there's a lot in flux, and we plan on checking in with each jurisdiction over the next month or two. So yeah, really the intention is to have every jurisdiction involved in terms of identifying priorities for funding that SCTA manages. And then, more technical assistance and assistance with the outreach process for those jurisdictions that are in need of full revision of their local plans. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's kind of the overview of where we are. We just recently found out that we didn't get the grant, and these are our first stab at our next steps.
Okay, well, thanks for the update. Dana, how much did you guys ask for? I can't recall.
We asked for about it's a little over $500,000. And that, that could change a bit, kind of depending on the level of needs. If, we definitely want to get more specific about what the level of needs for the local plan updates are. And, depending on how much progress has been made between the last time we looked at this and now, or what we expect, where we expect things to be really in fall of next year, that could be changed. That could affect the total ask as well.
Okay, I see GIP has his hand up.
I think maybe Dana might have just answered it. So Dana, then I understand. So based on what you just said, you're going to push off your update of the countywide master plan till at least the fall of next year in hopes of getting this grant, or am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. We definitely want to reapply for the grant. And, we think we may be able to do certain pieces, pieces of an update for the countywide plan without the grant. And there's pieces that we could get started on, but we haven't fully assessed what that is and how it, how we would phase that in front of hopefully receiving the grant.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'll chat with you offline because yeah, I don't want to wait till September of 2022 to start ours. But I did want to coordinate with you. So hopefully we can still do that to some level. So, okay. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, I think whatever schedule, I guess, any plans that are adopted ahead of adopting the countywide plan, we will always be able to include the projects that were adopted in those local plans into the countywide plan. Of course, ideally, it's, we could use this grant funding to cover more of the plans that do need updating and coordinate the process as much as possible. But, there's a lot of moving pieces and needs that come ahead of it. So we understand that.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, then I think we can move along to item 10, the draft comprehensive transportation plan.
All right, so this is an information item. We have a link in here for the draft comprehensive transportation plan that's posted on our website, and as well as a link to the presentation that I'm sure you have most of you have seen. It's gone to every committee and our board, as well as a webinar that we held. So we are accepting public comments. There's a public comment form in the agenda, in that link there, 10.2. And we're accepting comments through August 13th. And so we're gonna spare all of you from seeing the presentation again, but Chris and I would be happy to answer any questions or take comments if you have any.
Any questions for Dana or Chris on that whole process? I'm not seeing any hands, no chat questions. So I think we can move on to updates. I'll start off the updates by mentioning that our next committee meeting is going to be on August 18th. And the two primary topics of discussion are going to be the Monterey Bridge replacement project. So Public Works is going to talk about their preliminary designs for that and how it accommodates bikes and pedestrians. That's out in Monterey, over the Russian River. And then we have Regional Parks that wants to discuss their e-bike policy on their e-bike usage on pathways. And Elizabeth, I don't know if you have anything in addition to add about that topic. But those are our two primary topics, and I can't think of anything else to really update the group on other than that.
Hey, Stephen, just to add, we're looking right now at power assist e-bikes. And yeah, we're really exploring this as a topic at this time.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else want to continue? I can just kind of go down the list, and I see Nancy. Do you want to update City of Santa Rosa? Nancy, can you hear me? Nancy, I don't know if you've got your mute off or. Why don't we go on to Edie? You have something for City of Rohnert Park?
Yeah, we're our Measure M funded Highway 101 bike ped crossing feasibility study. We have pretty much settled on the preferred alternative is the Copeland Creek crossing, an over crossing, not an under crossing, and so we are at the final stage. So our council is excited, our community is excited. We have to calm them down because I think we've heard rumors that people are saying it's going to be built soon. This is feasibility. So anyway, that should be going to our council pretty soon. But yeah, first steps, we just look up the street, see that it is possible. So that's pretty much it. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Edie. How about we go on to Ben, City of Hillsborough?
Yeah, I can report that we finished our crosswalk enhancement project at the Memorial Beach at Amy's Wicked Slush on Healdsburg Avenue. That's the RRFB. Our Foss Creek pathway is moving ahead. We've just installed 2 bridges and hope to complete that project in October. And our electric bike RFP is planned to go out this week. That's the one that's funded by the Quick Strike program. What else? And our local road safety plan we've had our second stakeholder meeting, and the draft report is being prepared and updated. That's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Ben. I see Nancy's hand up, so I'm gonna go back to Nancy and give a report for the city of Santa Rosa.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. So I'm just now getting my work audio, which is still kind of funky. I don't know what's happening. And now my video, now my audio is kind of weird. So let's see. I think let's talk about our road safety plans. We are hopefully wrapping up our Stony Point Road corridor study next week. So the consultant is putting the last touches on that. So that's been an exciting process to get that put in place. And once that's done, we'll be looking now at trying to find some funds to implement some of the recommendations that came out of that plan for bike and ped enhancements along that corridor. So that's exciting. And I'll stick with the corridor study. So we are kind of in the midst of finishing up, well, halfway through our analysis on the 4th Street, College Avenue, and Montgomery Drive. And then we have yet to had our first stakeholder meetings on the Roseland Creek, but the other 3, we've had stakeholder meetings and those have been really good. And so just excited to keep that one moving along, having some really good ideas come out of that process, which is working with our groups, and there'll be some online opportunities for people to give input on. So that's getting some good momentum. In terms of actual infrastructure, yeah, Dana knows this. We put in some TFCA funding requests for some bike lanes and class 4s on Armory and a little piece of Santa Rosa Avenue there, where that 1st Street where it connects up to the Prince Memorial Greenway. So we're glad to hear that that's going to be moving forward. And let's see, we're starting to do looking at our slurry and our pavement contract work. So there may be some opportunities to put in some more striping as part of those contracts this year. And let's see what else. Yeah, there's just a lot of, I think, work in design at this point. And we'll probably see a lot more bike lanes come in next year. As a part of our OBAG 2 project, we'll have some more bike lanes on range, and then we'll have a few other ones that will come out of the TFCA process. So those will probably come out next year. So I think that's about it. We did have a really good meeting with our the bike ped overcrossing with our a virtual meeting last week, and had some really good feedback from individuals on just some of the design elements where the 2, not the actual structure, but where the landings are on each side of the freeway. So on Edwards and then on Elliott. So we got some really good some ideas from some of the participants in the meeting. So that's good. That's our first one. And so the design is kind of in full steam. So that's real encouraging. And that's about I don't know, probably 12 to 18 month design process. So this time next year, we'll be pretty close to finishing up the design on the overcrossing. So that's it for me.
Okay, thanks. Excuse me. Thanks, Nancy. Let's go on to Ken, City of Petaluma.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. We're wrapped up construction on Lynch Creek Trail, Payran, about 1,000-foot section, and I've got council approval to move on to another section of Lynch Creek Trail, Fox Hollow. So that was a good win instead of having to go back out to bid. We're doing a lot of work on curb ramps downtown and some of the toughest sites with underground basements in the sidewalk, and we've had some challenges, but it seems like we've improved the walkability in downtown Petaluma quite a bit. And then we've started construction on the Prince Park Trail rehab, and that work, it's a small project, but it's an important connectivity in Petaluma from Lynch Creek Trail to the south on Wiseman Trail. And then we've started our bike ped master plan update. Farron Piers is going to be doing that. We had initial kickoff meeting. And then we're doing a lot of sort of pavement restoration work and trying to find ways of putting active transportation in that. So getting some assistance on that from Parisi, and I'm going to do another presentation to PBAC on some ideas and try to get a consensus on that. So that's about what we have in Petaluma. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Let's go on to JP. Ty?
Nothing really to report out from Katati that I didn't, well, I guess last time I did mention the project that was happening at the West Sierra on-ramp for Highway 101 on-ramp. That project is complete, which involved stop sign and some improved crosswalks down Sierra Avenue. The good news is these really bring us to the end of our project list in our bike and ped master plan. The bad news is we don't have a new list, so we need to get that updated as fast as possible. So we also will be moving like Petaluma to get going on our update, and may actually have our first kickoff meeting as early as September, possibly September 7th. It will be a high-level meeting, more developing the plan to go forward through the update. And then I did have a question for Nancy. Nancy, did you say for sure that that overcrossing is going to be at Elliott and Edwards? Is that where that pedestrian overcrossing is going to go? Was that final?
JP,
Yeah.
you bet. Come on, it came right out of the environmental document. I didn't say it, the environmental document, and Caltrans said it. So yeah, it's all done. It got approved in March. So yeah, we're all good.
Excellent. Yeah, I like that location. I think it's great. Thanks.
Well, they asked you, and that's why they made that decision.
Yeah. Well, you know.
All right, thanks.
Okay, how about we go on to Mona with Town of Windsor?
Trying to see if I can get my video to unmute. Okay, anyways, not much to report. Our local road safety plan is also, a draft has been completed, but we are making some edits to the draft before we release it to the technical working group for their review and input. And then Gelati Construction is on board. We're going to have a pre-construction meeting tomorrow to get started on our roundabout project at Windsor Road and Windsor River Road. And I think you are going to relocate some of your bus stops for us. So,
yes.
Okay, and that's it.
Okay, thanks, Mona. I'm going to circle back to Elizabeth. I don't know if you have more for regional parks, Elizabeth.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. We have a number of regional parks has a number of things in design, and we're also reviewing development plans. A couple of highlights, development plans along Sonoma Valley Trail, near Adobe Canyon Road, and also at Arnold Drive to Agua Caliente. We're working with City of Santa Rosa on the Roseland Avenue apartments. And there's potential crossing of the Joe Rodota Trail, the West Avenue extension. Thank you for Stephen for including the discussion about the 116 bridge crossing in Monterey. To get back to Eris's question, I don't know as far as e-bikes in the presentation what class of that we're looking at. I'm not familiar enough with the terms for the e-bikes. We are putting out requesting consultant services for design for the Lower Russian River Trail, Mirabel Road to Martinelli Road, West County Trail at Occidental Road. We have 90% plans on that. We're getting an encroachment permit from Caltrans, so we're excited that's moving forward to make the better link on West County Trail. There's a bit of a gap there. City of Sebastopol, we're looking forward to working with them for starting on implementing some sections of the trail, or designing, I should say, sections of the trail in Sebastopol. City of Petaluma will work with you in the future. The Joe Rodota Trail bridge replacement, design and environmental work is in progress. And the Central Sonoma Valley Trail, the one that was constructed 2 years ago with a Measure M funding, there's a development proposal on the north side of Verano Avenue. So we're working with that developer now on where they're seeking right-of-way vacation. So we will be preserving the trail in that corridor. It might be some realignment, but just a heads up on that. So that's an overview.
Okay, keeping busy at regional parks. A lot of stuff going on. That's great. I see Orlando Ramirez from Caltrans District 4. No, Caltrans has anything to report to the group?
No, Steve, I was just here attending to mostly here on the info item on the pedestrian plan. I too have been reviewing it. And I will be going over that with my supervisor in the next few days to give my thoughts and comments to her about that.
Okay, great, thanks.
You're welcome.
I think I hit everybody. Dana, can you? Yeah, I think I've gotten everybody. Next up is Vision Zero. If we can move over to Kristen for an update on Vision Zero.
Yeah, I'm sorry I can't change my name, but yes, I can't seem to make it change to Kristen, but hello and thanks for having me. We're working on an outline for the action plan. Had some real traction last month, and our next meeting is next week, Tuesday from 10 to 11:30. We'll be re-reviewing that and hopefully starting to have some, a real sense of a strong outline for the group to look at, and then go out into the community and get further input. We have just, the biggest news on my in my life right now is having finally had our consultant come on board for outreach and facilitation and communication. So our bandwidth just expanded greatly in terms of being able to really get some good input that'll help move this process forward, because it does have a firm deadline in the winter. The Strava data was really interesting. I really appreciated that input today. And it sort of goes along with some of the hospital trauma data that we're getting or have been offered from Providence. And it's making my wheels spin in terms of how do we capture some of that. Right now our data dashboard is very formal data from the state. So it will be interesting to see if there's ways we can use some of this less refined data, so to speak, that still might be ways to inform some of our decisions. In MTC is very interested also on a region-wide basis in Vision Zero, as is Caltrans, which is where our grant is from. So that is something where later in this month on the 18th of August, August 18th will be a Bay Area Vision Zero working group meeting. So that'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. That's just sort of formative at this point, and there's a lot of interest. I already said our next meeting is next Tuesday, 10 to 11:30, and we are changing our September meeting, in case anyone wants to jot it down, to 9:14 from 1 to 2:30 because of our regularly scheduled meeting fell right at the holiday, right at the day after the holiday. So I think that's pretty much it, unless anyone has any questions for me.
See Nancy just raised her hand.
Yeah, yeah, Kristen, what did you say the Vision Zero meeting is now?
This Tuesday, is coming Tuesday.
All right, I got
8:30.
that one, but in September. Sorry.
September will be, and I'll be sending this out later today, Nancy, but 9/14, the 14th, from 1 to 2.
Oh, that's a Tuesday. Okay.
Yeah, I don't have in front of me what day that is, but yeah, it's from 1 to 2:30 though.
Okay, got it. Check.
You had indicated you were available.
Yeah, check. Got it. Thank you.
Mhm.
Gotta lower my hand. I took my video off, so because it was driving me crazy. So I'm sure it was everyone else was.
Looked like a big snowstorm out there, Nancy.
We have rain over here on Stony Point. We had a huge rainstorm.
Okay, I think that's thanks, Kristen, for the update on Vision Zero. And I'm not sure, are you going to lead the discussion on the bike share update, Dana?
Yeah, I'll just be brief. We are working through the planning phase still. The operator put out a map for staff review on the kind of more general zones of interest where we would look for bike share hubs. And in the process of reviewing that, we have a meeting tomorrow, a working group meeting tomorrow, and then we'll be setting up the one-on-one meetings with both the operator and staff at the jurisdictions involved to go into further detail on the comments that they've sent in on the map. So hopefully by our next CBPAC meeting, we'll have a lot more firm news and information on the timeline for launch. So stay tuned.
See, Nancy has her hand up.
Hey, Dana. So, and maybe we could talk about this offline, but I thought I saw an email that you sent to David Lieberman at the JC about getting together, and did that go anywhere? I haven't really heard anything.
I have not gotten a response to that email.
Okay, so you'll keep me in the loop because we definitely want to be part of that conversation.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, and we could talk more about that when we set up our meetings with both.
That sounds good. Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay. If you can move on to any other business or comments or announcements from the group that haven't already been made. Steve Vertelbaugh, I see your hand up.
Yes, there's been some discussion about e-bikes, and I'm interested in whether we're looking for prohibition of certain e-bikes with capacity for very high speeds, or whether we're looking in the direction of having speed limits so that people don't have to be wedded to a particular bike to operate on the trails. I think that's an important issue that we're going to have to resolve. And it would be good if we could do it the same way everywhere in the county.
Well, that's it. That's a good comment. I appreciate that, Steve. And I know that you're on our mailing list for the August 18th meeting. So we'll be discussing that more with regional parks. Elizabeth, I don't know if you have anything to add.
I was, and I just shared this with Eris as well. So I understand Melanie Parker will be making the presentation
Yeah.
and talking about potentials for creating policy around that. And she's the one that's most up to speed in our agency on e-bikes.
So that's going to be on the 18th?
That's right. The next meeting for the unincorporated Sonoma County Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee
Good.
is Wednesday, August 18th.
What time is that?
It starts at 6.
All right. Great. Thank you.
I see Eris has her hand up.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm actually meeting tomorrow with Melanie Parker to talk e-bikes. And I know she's also, I think, talking with my colleague at the Santa Rosa Cycling Club. So there's lots of conversations happening with those of us who use, and who not only, I've been riding an e-bike for over 2 years, but we also have done workshops and stuff, and have worked with the Sonoma Clean Power e-bike program, and up on existing regulations and usage stuff. So looking forward to what comes out with that. I'm always happy to answer anybody's questions about e-bikes or let you take a spin on mine.
All right. Thanks, Eris. Nancy, I see your hand up.
Oh, yeah. So is Melanie going to be talking about speed limits on class 1s? I guess I want a clarification on that. I guess I wondered.
Nancy, I don't have an answer to your question. She is going to be presenting information on e-bikes at the discussion at the meeting
Okay.
that Stephen.
My understanding is that currently on all class 1 bike paths in the county, there is a speed limit of 15 miles an hour, regardless of what kind of bike you're riding. And I will say that I am regularly passed by road bikers without any electric assist at speeds higher than that, on the road, at least, occasionally on the path. But I'm assuming that that regional park's interest is in regulating on regional park property.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Harris and Elizabeth.
Okay. Any final comments or announcements? Any other business? We're coming up on 3:30, so I think we could maybe wrap this up. If there's nothing else, our next meeting is going to be in September 28th. So until then, thanks everybody for being here. And we'll see you then. Thanks, Dana.
Thank you all.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.